Welcome to State of the Offense, your unbiased coverage of your favorite team's offense, the Miami Dolphins. At this point of the year, while there are many unknowns, I believe that Dolphins fans should expect an extremely exciting offense going into the 2023 season. Last year, the Dolphins finished 6th in total offense, 4th in passing, 25th in rushing, and 11th in scoring, which earned them a 9-8 record and a wild card spot in the playoffs. In the skill positions, the Dolphins bring back their base package starters from last season. In the draft, the Dolphins added running back Devon Achane from Texas A&M in the 3rd round. Most fantasy football shows will only mention skill players, but at State of the Offense, we do cover the entire offense. We start in the trenches by analyzing the condition of the offensive line. All of the Dolphins' projected starters on the offensive line were on their roster last year. The current depth chart shows 2 spots that will differ from last year's lineup. Terron Armstead showed Dolphins fans what he showed Saints fans for 9 years. He is one of the best left tackles in the game, but he has battled injuries regularly in his career. Last year, Armstead missed 4 games, and he graded at a 93 with a 69.4% snap share. Only 2 tackles in the NFL graded higher than Armstead last year: Trent Williams and Lane Johnson. Armstead graded at the same level as Tampa's Tristan Wirfs and Green Bay's David Bakhtiari. The Dolphins have Armstead under contract until 2026, but if Armstead's injuries persist or his play declines, Miami has an out in 2025 from his deal. Left guard Liam Eichenberg is entering his 3rd season in Miami. The 2021 second-round pick injured his knee in Week 8, and he returned in Week 17. In the games he played, he had a 97.4% snap share, and he rated at a 67. Year 3 is a big year for Eichenberg to prove himself to the organization. His backup, Robert Jones, filled in for him during his absence, but did not distinguish himself. Connor Williams' first season in Miami went very well. After 4 seasons in Dallas, Connor started all 17 games and had a 100% snap share, while grading at an 80. His 80 rating places him as the number 7 center in the NFL. Williams is a free agent next offseason. 4th-year right guard Robert Hunt had a very similar type of season as Connor Williams did in 2022. Hunt also started all 17 games, graded at an 80, and he played 99.9% of the snaps. Hunt was a 2020 draft choice, so he is in a contract year. Hunt's 2020 draft classmate, right tackle Austin Jackson, has not produced as well as Hunt during his career. Last season, Jackson was only able to play 84 snaps, and he graded at a 68. In the offseason, he had reconstructive ankle surgery. The Dolphins declined his 5th-year option, so Jackson will be a free agent after this season. Behind Jackson on the depth chart is former Patriot Isaiah Wynn, who last year graded at a 78 in 9 games played. Wynn suffered a foot injury in New England. Wynn was signed to a 1-year deal. The Dolphins have invested free agent money and high draft picks on their offensive line. It hasn't necessarily paid off yet, but if the young trio of Eichenberg, Hunt, and Jackson can stay healthy and play up to the level of their initial draft status, the Dolphins may become a force up front. 3 offensive linemen are free agents, and the other 2 missed multiple games last season, so the long-term security of the offensive line is still unsettled. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa's season was a tale of polar opposites last year. Tua played in 13 games last season, and he was fantastic. His yards per attempt jumped from 6.8 to 8.9. Touchdown-interception ratio went from 16.10 to 25.8. His passer rating from 90.1 to 105.5. and his QBR from 55.7 to 68.8. On the flip side, Tua suffered through some scary moments on the field with concussions. The Dolphins showed a huge sign of confidence in Tua by taking his 5th-year option, which means that Tua will be under contract through 2024. In fantasy football, Tua was 5th in points per game between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, but due to his injuries, he finished 14th in total points in fantasy. Tua is currently the quarterback 14 in fantasy drafts, getting taken at player 121, which is an 11th round pick. I believe that because of the quality of the Miami passing attack, Tua potentially can blow quarterback 14 out of the water. It is all about Tua's availability. Ideally, you get a quarterback you're comfortable with before you draft Tua in fantasy, and if Tua outperforms your first quarterback drafted, you're still okay. If you want to make Tua your number 1 quarterback in the 11th round, I would suggest that grabbing another quarterback in round rounds 12 and 13. Guys like Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Bryce Young are all available in that range after Tua. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are one of the most explosive wide receiver duos I've ever seen. Their combined totals last year: 194 catches, 287 targets, 3,066 yards, and 15 touchdowns. They were absolutely amazing. Tyreek Hill was wide receiver 3 in points and wide receiver 4 in average points per game. Who needs Patrick Mahomes, right? Jalen Waddle was wide receiver 7 in points and wide receiver 14 in points per game. Tyreek is wide receiver 4 in drafts now, going at pick number 8 overall. Jalen Waddle is the wide receiver 10, going at pick 22 overall. If Tua plays 17 games and he improves from year 3 to year 4, which is a reasonable assumption, Hill and Waddle can do even better than they did last year. Wide receivers are now the fantasy football priority position, where elite wide receivers are so dominant that they deserve to be first-round draft picks. Most fantasy leagues are also points per reception, so pass catchers hold more value. I don't see the Dolphins passing any less than they did last year if they have Tua available all year. Tyreek and Waddle deserve to be drafted where they are right now. It can be argued that Waddle should go higher than 22nd overall. By the way, with the departures of Trent Sherfield to Buffalo and Mike Gesicki to New England, there are 103 vacant targets available from last year between those two. How much of that will go to Tyreek and Waddle? Cedric Wilson, Robbie Chosen, formerly known as Robbie Anderson, and Braxton Berrios will compete for catches. And they may end up taking Sherfield and Gesicki stats, but the possibilities for Hill and Waddle to be even more productive is very possible in 2023. At the tight end position, Durham Smythe is back as the starting tight end, but last season he only generated 20 targets in the passing game in 16 games. Mike Gesicki is in New England now, so the Dolphins do not have a proven pass-catching tight end on the roster. Miami is bringing back Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson at the running back position. Between them, they average 4.8 yards per carry. In the receiving game, they combined for 66 targets. Nothing spectacular there, but the Dolphins made a very interesting move in the draft at running back. They used the 84th pick overall in the 3rd round on speedster Devon Achane from Texas A&M. In space, Achane is a problem. He only caught 65 passes at A&M in 3 seasons, but if the Dolphins put him on the field with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they will have a speed advantage over defenses that no other NFL team can provide. We're talking about a 185-pound running back who ran a 4.32 40. Last season, 113 passes were thrown to running backs. There are 103 passes that went to Mike Gesicki and Trent Sherfield last year that are also vacant. Is it possible that Mike McDaniel incorporates Achane as a satellite back where he can see 100 targets in the passing game? If so, the Dolphins will be indefensible. The Dolphins will split work in a committee the way they did last year. Wilson and Mostert kind of cancel each other's values out in fantasy football. Devon Achane will take touches away from them as well. In drafts, Wilson is player 115, Mostert 133, and Achane 163, which makes them 10th, 12th, and 14th round picks, respectively. Mostert was the running back 26 in total points and running back 35 in points per game last year. Right now, he's the 40th running back drafted. Jeff Wilson was the running back 30 in total points and running back 38 in points per game. He's currently getting drafted as the 35th running back. Achane is now the running back 49. All 3 players will probably have good weeks during the season, but trying to predict it from week to week may become frustrating as a fantasy player. If the Dolphins feature Achane in the passing game in PPR leagues, I really like his upside. For value, upside, youth, and game-breaking ability, Devon Achane is a great dynasty play. All of these guys, Mostert, Wilson, and Achane, can function as backups in your fantasy lineup, but Achane is the one that I'm most interested in drafting as a wild card sleeper in the 2023 drafts. Mike McDaniel's scheme proved hard to defend last year. The Dolphins' ability in the passing game is potentially elite. The speed the Dolphins can put on the field creates plenty of mismatches. The success of the Miami Dolphins and potentially your fantasy team may hinge on the availability of Tua Tagovailoa. If luck breaks his way and the Dolphins' way, the Dolphins are good enough to make it to the Super Bowl. If you have to rely on Mike White or Skylar Thompson, making the playoffs again will probably prove to be difficult. Miami has a very talented roster that can compete on both sides of the ball. They have a young coach who showed very well in his first year. As I mentioned earlier, this team's ceiling is the Super Bowl, but quarterback health will ultimately prove to be the difference maker in 2023. If you like today's coverage of the Miami Dolphins offense, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.